I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Happy Halloween, everybody. CJ, remember we have audio listeners who are not watching us in the costume. CJ, can you tell everyone who you're supposed to be for Halloween?
I am wearing a low quality Batman costume.
This is like Adam West-esque.
Well, you know, I have a running gag on the show about my age, so I need to need to dust this one out of the closet from back in the 60s.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. I was about to say, you and Robin look like you need to go on a run somewhere to fight crime.
But it's all in good fun.
I'm sorry. It's not funny. I'm supposed to be Homer Simpson. We're a Homer Simpson onesie. You can tell with the eyes on top and the little hair thing atop that as well. They have the two. I had something else in mind, but I kind of backed out the last second because I wasn't sure if my voice was going to be muffled wearing it. Not to mention, I think speaking wearing that costume would have defeated the purpose of me wearing it. So the Homer Simpson onesie, one of the greatest animated shows, one of the greatest animated characters of all time. That is my pick for Halloween.
Well, Batman never goes out of style. That's kind of my thinking. So
Batman will never go out of style.
I love all the things that were like cool cartoons when I was a kid that are still around. So there's actually lots of them. It's amazing how much stuff has endured, but here we are.
Have you seen any cool costumes from NHL players? Like the Bruins, they always do something fun every year on Halloween. I think they all dressed up as Mario characters from that universe. Anything catch your eye over the last few days?
I like the Dallas Stars. You know, they have that cluster of Finnish players that they've kind of called the Finnish Mafia, and they all went in mafioso outfits to the party. I thought that was pretty funny. You had Joe Pavelski, actually. He was dressed up as a caddy, a golf caddy for that one. And Wyatt Johnston, who lives at his house, a 19-year-old kid, was a golfer. So I guess the old guy's caddying for the young buck. There's a lot of good stuff. One thing that's actually always fascinated me, Julian, is literally every NHL team holds a Halloween party. It's actually a thing. Like, it's not just, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you went to a Halloween party. I didn't actually go to any Halloween parties. It's not something that's really been part of my life a whole bunch, but it's a thing.
Aww, that sounds like you. Do you want to go to more of these?
No, it's just not really like my friends. We just didn't really do that. Is my point. Like, I'm not saying I've got no one inviting me places. It's more, I was never one in my 20s, say, or 30s even to get dressed up and do something. But it's fascinating. I think it falls perfectly right after training camp. It's a few weeks later, the season gets going. I think somewhere along the line, teams have worked this into a green light night with their organizations. Obviously, they can't all do it because the NHL schedule on Halloween or even this past weekend. Some of them have had to do it a week ago, and some might even do it a bit after Halloween. But it's a huge traditional thing. And so, you know, in the advent of social media becoming so popular, we get to see all the costumes now. But it's something even before social media was really going hot that you know, NHL teams were getting together and wearing crazy costumes. And, you know, it's like a real team building event early in the season.
Yeah, especially if you're like a young guy, you know, still getting your first few games in, you go to a party with your older teammates, and that helps you get adjusted. One other NHL player I want to shout out, Jesse Puljujarvi. You ever watched the movie Finding Nemo?
Yes, way back when.
Yeah, Jesse Puljujarvi dresses up as the little girl in the movie who's like tapping on the fish tank, and I guess he has his partner in like a bag, that I think she's dressed up as Nemo, actually. So that I have to give Jesse Puljujarvi a shout out for. He got everything: the hair, the braces. It's perfect. Like, this is like, that might actually be the best costume any NHL player has worn throughout this year's Halloween. Like, that actually looks pretty sick. I don't know if there's a way we could get like photos up of like everybody, but like that's a really cool costume.
Yeah, you're gonna see it. IG is gonna be full of them. I saw Post Malone. Tyler Seguin as Post Malone was pretty good.
Oh, that's pretty good.
They like he had the look down. Like he definitely spent some time getting that thing right. There's all kinds. David Pasternak. I don't know if you saw his. He was pretty funny too. So it's look, we can't take ourselves too seriously. We're two grown men at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning wearing costumes. So
on Halloween, like Halloween's fun for me. I love the idea of just like, whether it's a party or trick-or-treating back in the old days, man, just enjoying the scary season. And then after that, it's just going to be Christmas music for like 2 months.
Mariah Carey is just already singing in my ears.
Is that already that's your favorite Christmas song, right?
No, I thought I went more with the "Do They Know It's Christmas Time?"
Right. Yes. Band-Aid. Yes. Also, I think I just found David Pasternak's costume. Okay. I'm trying to look at it. He's wearing a blonde wig. He's doing the splits. Who is he supposed to be?
I don't know. I just think it's funny.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's just I'm trying to figure out who is he supposed to be? Sia? Maybe the singer Sia? I don't know if he might be that. Oh, okay. Someone is saying in the comments that he is there's a video from this artist named Sia called Chandelier, and he's supposed to be like the dancer from that video. Now I understand the costume and the splits. That's actually a really good idea. Now I understand.
Right. See, I'm limited in my costume grading because of the whole not knowing everything that's going on in the world pop culture wise. So I'm sure there's like a lot of amazing costumes that are hilarious if you understand the references, but as we know, not my strong suit.
Speaking of pop culture, I have a little surprise for you before the end of this show. We'll get to that surprise, and we'll get to all the other NHL news and notes.
I got a few surprises here for myself.
Oh, I imagine. I just hope you remember to floss after you eat all those chocolates, buddy.
Not an O. Henry to be found, though.
Well, that's your loss. If you want to decrease the quality of your Halloween, that's not on me.
Got a Mr. Big here, a Reese's Piece.
Okay, we can agree on those two, though. Those
Crispy
are two.
Crunch.
The Crispy Crunch is overrated.
We don't have to go
First
back
two,
down
like,
this
you
episode.
good.
Like, it's just nice to eat chocolate in the morning.
Not something Coburg Papa would have let you do maybe 30 years ago?
No chance. No chance.
No chance at all.
And the worst thing, Coburg Papa's got a sweet tooth. So like when I came back in with my Halloween loot, I bet half of it was gone by the morning. We'll call it like a Coburg Papa tax.
That's exactly what that's called, man. When that older parent comes in and takes your stuff, that's exactly what that's called. Man, we got a lot to get to today. But before we get to all of the fun NHL topics we're going to get to, we're going to try to hit them all as quickly as we can. We're going to bring on David Bastel. Maybe he has also decided to wear a costume with us today. From Sports Interaction, as always, if you're playing Sports Interaction, only for those 19 and over, we ask that you please play responsibly, and there will be a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of the show. It's time for a spooky edition of You Can Bet That.
Sports Interaction, Canada's Sportsbook, presents You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Ontario only.
Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel, the segment where we always take ourselves seriously. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. DB, for all the people listening on the podcast version of this, can you tell everyone who you're supposed to be for Halloween?
You know what? It could be a combination of Lego Man or Elvis. The kids love Lego Man. They don't know who Elvis is.
It's a sick costume.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. I mean, Batman's always cool. Batman was cool when I was a kid, and will be cool when my kid's kid is cool. And of course,
Oh man. Anyway, let's get to, first off, thank you. Second off, let's get to this Austin Matthews goal prop for total goals in November. That's really interesting on the Sports Interaction website.
Well, you know what I like about these things, because we work with the lines management crew to do some unique props, and a lot of times you sit there and you scope out a month and you go, okay, well, the Leafs play X amount of games. How many goals will the Rocket Richard winner score? And he hasn't exactly been off to a hot start. He has scored recently, and including on Sunday night, which is great. But what does he do in 15 games? Well, they've established 9.5 as the number. I'm leaning to the under, only because there's some pretty good value, CJ, on the under at 2.02. And you know what? If he gets 9 goals in 15 games, which is the under technically, still a pretty good month for 34.
It would be, it's such interesting circumstances with this one, just because Austin Matthews hasn't scored, as you mentioned, at his typical rate. And I just feel like a lot of money would have been lost over the years betting the under on Austin Matthews goals. So I would probably lean over on that one. He's been hitting posts. The team's obviously in a tough spot. This is a big month for him. And so you can take a fun under. I'll take a fun over.
Who's going to tell CJ he should lower the eye slits for his mask?
There you go.
I'm sorry. Oh man, I'm sorry, buddy. I should have tried to give you like a signal or something.
I
Totally
couldn't see
right.
actually, so I.
Okay, before we let this go any more off the rails, DB, we got the Monday Night Football game between the Browns and the Bengals to talk about.
Yeah, you know what? Battle of Ohio, right? This is a rival as early as any forms of football. Very rich football country in that area. Bengals slight favorites because they are the better of the team on paper. I look at this number being a little low. Cleveland's defense is not very good. Their rush defense is even worse than their regular defense. And, Joe Burrow is coming off maybe his best game of the year last week. I'm circling the Bengals minus the 3 points. I think this is a touchdown game, CJ.
This is another Monday nighter that could be a Thursday nighter. That's my feel about it. I'll be happy to be out trick-or-treating instead of watching this one.
Only 3 NHL games too. It's like, come on, NHL, jump on this. I know you want to stay away from Monday Night Football, but still, I mean, it's too bad. Oh well, what are you gonna do?
I don't know. I think some of us here actually like football, so we don't mind being away. Oh, actually, we don't mind being on Monday Night Football, I should say. DB, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props again. sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. DB, we'll see you Thursday. Okay, so the Leafs, Erik Karlsson, Ethan Bear, Columbus, those are some of the mix of different topics I want to get to quickly. Is there one among the 4 that you'd like for us to start with?
I might as well start with the Leafs.
Okay.
Are you going to have trouble having a serious discussion with me in these outfits?
I don't know. I feel I don't know. What helps is you're not going to be adjusting your face, the eyes during this whole thing. Right?
I had to abandon the whole mask situation. It's too distracting.
Oh, but here's the thing: we're a good hockey podcast. We find ways to have fun, but we find ways to be serious and professional. So we'll find ways to get through this segment. I think we're good enough to do this job.
We're uniquely skilled.
I yes, especially you, sir, the Caped Crusader that you are. Can Insider J Buddy, can you please do a side by side of all the Batmans through history, and please just put CJ's somewhere on the timeline? He's like after Adam West or something. Oh my god!
Oh, we're off the rails.
Man. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Look, we need to get this stuff out here. It's Halloween. We have to have some fun here.
We're like the antidote to Steve Dangle talking about the Leafs right now.
Oh man, I haven't. So at this point of the recording, I have not watched the latest LFRs, and all we got was that it's supposed to be a one taker. And normally, when he does those LFRs as one takers, like he has a lot to say, really charged, and he's hyped up for a reason.
I'll say I'm impressed because not only is it a one taker, he builds an ad read into the one taker.
Yes, he does
in one take. Anyway, it's real. It's real.
Yeah. Steve Dangle, such a talented person, but yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, things are not that great in Leafland right now. I mean, they do. You know what's funny? Actually, we had a conversation with a good friend of ours, Drew Livingston, the other day, and he mentioned the fact that at one point the Avs and the Leafs have the same NHL record, and on one side things are a little bit more optimistic, and on the other side things are not so. So what's your read on the Leafs and wherever the hell they're at right now?
Well, this is kind of wild, and I actually put this at the top of the newsletter I put out on Monday, Inside the NHL. Please subscribe.
Please subscribe to the newsletter.
But it's actually crazy. 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cup champions came through the first month of the regular season having more losses than wins, when you include the overtime and shootout losses. And so the Leafs are actually, we can't even say at 4-4-2 as they enter November, that they're on a path that can't lead to a Stanley Cup, because 4 of the last 5 teams that won the trophy have had this. But I would argue what those teams didn't have is the baggage, right? Maybe you argue because the first team in that run of 5 that did it was the Washington Capitals back in 2017-18. Maybe you argue that they had similar baggage just because of all the years they made the playoffs, couldn't get past the second round in their case, not the first, kept losing to Pittsburgh, and they sort of slayed those demons. But, what I think compounds the frustration around the Leafs is this is years and years and years of people seeing something similar. And obviously the team has changed and things go on, but, you start to wonder about the makeup of the team again. And I know that those questions have been asked in prior off seasons. I think even if we just focus in on this year though, Julian, it's 6 weeks as we're recording this since training camp open. The day training camp open, Sheldon Keefe addressed the media, as every coach does around the league. And he was talking about how, the Leafs had earned the right to consider themselves an elite team, or paraphrasing his words, but something along those lines. And on the surface, he's right. They had 115 points last year. But 6 weeks later, here they are having lost to, I don't have the list in front of me, but last year's 32nd best team, 31st best team, something like 23, 22, 17, and 14. They've lost 6 games to this point in the season, and they've all been the teams that weren't even in the top 10 of last year's league. And I think that that's concerning because of the facts that those are teams largely they should beat, you would expect, but also, there's a trend there of the Leafs sort of playing down to opponents over time. And so I don't really know where this goes just yet. Clearly management would want to be patient. I don't think that they're getting 10 games into the season and, question everything the way the fan base might, or members of the media might. But, there's a certain amount of pressure that's very real and mounting here. And you look ahead to this week, they play Wednesday at home to Philadelphia. They play Saturday to Boston, then Sunday at Carolina. The games are getting tougher. Carter Hart's had a really nice start for the Flyers. Obviously, the Bruins are red hot out of the gate, and Carolina is one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference as well. And so I think we're getting to the point where you measure by weeks, how much longer can management sort of resist making any kind of change and just wait for signs of life. And to my eye, it's maybe a week or two where you can do that. But, we should probably get into Sunday's game too. A lot of stuff happened in that game. Mitch Marner being benched by Sheldon Keefe is not a insignificant thing. And even though it was maybe only a couple shifts, it was sort of a brief benching, Marner going down the hallway with a stick, presumably to smash it against the wall or something like that. There's a lot more frustration there than just what 4-4-2 might say. We can all dust off these records. Well, this team started this, or last year's Leafs started that. There's a different feeling to this. And I think that's what stands out to me the most.
Yeah. Just watching from a distance, I kind of tried to just follow what was going on Twitter. I didn't watch the whole game. But yeah, it seemed like there was just, I think the Leafs had a lead, and then they blow the lead, they lose it in overtime. And yeah, if you can just kind of break down some of the craziness from that game, because it just seemed as if I don't know, just seeing the Leaf fans just kind of just the way oh, here we go again, as once that lead was starting to dissipate, it felt like a roller coaster out there.
Well, for fans or you just not fans of the Leaf, but NHL fans that aren't following this day by day, let's look at the last week, right? The Leafs have been on a long road trip. It's difficult to be on the road long for any team. This is not a unique to the Leafs. Lots of teams, obviously the teams on the West Coast have more long road trips just because of the way geographically the league's laid out. But when things go bad on that kind of trip, it goes really bad in a sense, because it's harder to get things back on track. And so they have a strong game actually last Saturday in Winnipeg. They win that game. Everything seems fine. They go to Vegas and have, it's close on the scoreboard kind of game, but it was not close on the play on the ice. Gave up a lot of chances through the middle of the ice to the Golden Knights. Vegas looked very strong there. So that's the first loss. Then you go to San Jose, you fall behind the Sharks. You're looking for your bounce back. There's a couple days between games. They had an off day in Vegas. They had a practice day. Lots of time to sort of say, okay, we're going to reset. and they're down 3-1 in the game to San Jose. They managed to push it to overtime, lose that game. So there's 2 in a row. Then you go Saturday to Los Angeles, lose that game. That's 3 in a row. And then you have to turn around basically 24 hours later and play in Anaheim. And obviously by this point, Sheldon Keefe is switching up all the lines. He switched up all his defensive pairings. He declined to tell the media what his changes were going to be pregame, kind of shrouded everything in a bit of mystery. Moved William Nylander to center, which is not somewhere he's really had to play too much in the NHL. Only really when injuries have necessitated it. When John Tavares, for example, got injured in the playoffs a couple years ago. But as a general rule, has not been a place he's played too much. They have a good start in Anaheim. Not only did they get the 1-0 lead, but they're the shots were really one-sided in the first period. They had huge territorial control. Anaheim claws back in the second period and takes back some of that territory. But you still get to the third and the Leafs are up 3-1. And so against Anaheim entered the game with 1 win, a team that's down and out in its own sort of mired in its own struggles. Sheldon Keefe calls a timeout in that third period with the Leafs ahead. Marner has a giveaway that leads to the second goal. So it's 3-2. That's when he gets benched, goes down the hallway, is obviously very frustrated. Then the Leafs gave up a 3-3 goal. They actually gave up a 4-3 goal in regulation that was a bit of a Hail Mary challenge in my view, but, it worked out in their favor. And they've had some challenges go against them. I won't get into that, but the point was that they almost lost the game in regulation, but again, they get to overtime and Trevor Zegras scores. And so I realize that's maybe more in depth than we usually go on any one team on this pod, but it just shows you how it's spiraling in the wrong direction. Right. And I think it reminds me a little of what Vancouver was going through a week or so ago. Like, it does feel like a team's never going to win again when they get in something like this. It's almost like this weird self-fulfilling prophecy. Even when they're up 3-1 against the 32nd place team in the league, it just seems like it's going to go wrong. But, this is a real test. And you start to just imagine like what this week could be. A couple more losses coming home now after that kind of road trip, how the fans react. I mean, all that stuff is in play now. And it's simple. If you're the Leafs, you just got to start winning games. You win games, all this talk changes. This all goes away. But if the losses continue to mount, I just don't know how long they can go and just be patient and wait for this group to become what it's supposed to be.
Last question before I move on to another topic. What do you think of apparently Kevin McGrann of the Toronto Star asked Sheldon Keefe if he should be worried about his future. What do you think of people who try to ask those questions when it's not going well for a head coach? Like, what do you think of that question?
I would say it's his job to a degree. I'm certainly not going to come out and criticize a colleague for doing that. Look, we're all going to, on a pod like this or on Twitter, everyone's sort of speculating about that. I don't really know I don't know what kind of answer you're looking for. It would be the only thing I would say. Like, I'm not sure really what Sheldon Keefe could say. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's partly why you ask it. You just want to see how he addresses it, how he approaches that, what he might say about that. It's not a nice part of the business because we're talking about a human being with a family and kids, and his kids are in minor hockey and all that stuff. But I'm sure this is a tough place, like a lot of them around the league, when things aren't going well for the team. There's a lot of speculation with that stuff. But I think that is a colleague doing his job. And again, we're all sitting here saying, hey, are the Leafs going to make a coaching change? I'm sure talk radio is full of that today in Toronto. So at least you've given Sheldon Keefe a chance to address that in some way. But I don't know what you would ask me if you were like, hey, CJ, your job's on the ropes. Like, performance isn't there. How do you think about that? I mean, I suppose you do what anyone would do in that situation. All you can try to do is control what you can control, which is have the team better prepared, more ready, try to push some different types of buttons in these games this week, because we don't know how many he'll get. Honestly, like, Sheldon Keefe has coached 200 plus games for the Leafs. I think he has the best coaching record of any Leafs coach in history by percentage. The Leafs have done a ton of winning since he took over, but everyone knows the consequences of this season. Mike Babcock did a ton of winning in Toronto too, not in the playoffs, same as Sheldon Keefe, but you got off to a rocky start a few years ago and he was fired. I think the circumstances are maybe a little different with management and the coaching staff being more aligned, but what isn't different is the pressure on the organization And look, you've got Barry Trotz sitting there. I'm not sure if Barry Trotz is a perfect answer, but he's a damn experienced coach who's had a lot of success, and he is just sitting there. And so I can understand where the speculation is coming from, and I certainly have no problem with Kevin McGran asking Sheldon Keefe about that.
And for what it's worth, I'm not trying to be critical of Kevin either. Good dude. I'm just curious for your opinion, and I pretty much share that same view as well. I'm not really sure how Keefe is supposed to answer that question, but I also understand why you asked that question. Yeah,
I think I saw someone say too. I actually haven't talked to any of my colleagues that were in Anaheim, but I guess the Leafs were trying to get Kyle Dubas to speak to the media. Sorry, that was
interesting
on site there, but it didn't happen. I mean, that's not typically the way the Leafs do things. Kyle Dubas will speak, but it's usually sort of pre-planned times of the year before trade deadline, after a big trade, after trade deadline, at the draft, all that stuff. He's not one to hold sort of impromptu, calm things down press conferences. I'll tell you the best of that there was in my years covering the Maple Leafs was Brian Burke. Like Brian Burke, you just never knew when he was going to have like an impromptu press availability. It was always sort of like get your popcorn out because you just never know what he would say. Very good for the media. I'm sure some PR professionals might debate about how good that is for the team at times, but it was those were some fun days back in the day. I remember the Leafs had to put Colton Orr on waivers at one point. And Brian Burke literally did a press conference bemoaning the fact the Rats had taken over the NHL and there wasn't a place for players like Colton Orr anymore in the league and stuff like that. Like that's just what I mean. I mean, and no offense to Colton Orr, but if now the Leafs would have to make a significant trade, I would think, for Kyle Dubas to speak in a public forum at the dais. And Brian Burke used to just do it on a Tuesday when things weren't to his liking.
Could they? I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to extend the topic longer, but is that the solution at this point?
It might be. Look, if he does, then you have the context here to say that that's unusual. Like that would tell you that we're in not just another 4-4-2 start, not just another season, not just another team trying to find its legs. I think that would reflect the urgency of what's going on. I mean, Patrick Allvin in Vancouver came out this week and publicly backed Bruce Boudreau. I mean, maybe something like that could happen with Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe. I suspect that won't be the case because, you put them out there in that situation. Anything might be asked. It becomes a bit more of a sideshow, but, we'll have to see how the Leafs respond to this. This is somewhat uncharted ground, I think, because, the feeling and the mood around the team is so tight. And I mean, part of you does want to go, look, you have all these star players that haven't performed up to star level yet. And I think it's a reasonable bet to think that that's going to happen if you just give it enough time. You've got, Timothy Liljegren coming back from injury. Like you're starting to get a little healthier as we get into this week. You would think water will find its level, but, pressure does crazy things to athletes. I'm reminded, I put it on Twitter the other day, but for anyone, I was a big fan of the 2015 Blue Jays. Of course, I'm always watching the Blue Jays, but they were struggling early that season. That ended up being a great year. And Josh Donaldson at one point said, this isn't the try league. It's the get it done league. And eventually they find players that'll get it done. Or people, I think he said, because it might not just be players you're talking about changing. And so, I think it's at the end of the day, the NHL is a get it done league. The Leafs are not getting it done at the level they're supposed to. And I don't think that they can afford to just cruise along. It has to change quickly or something's going to happen.
I'll say this, Dan, on that point about that 2015 team. The players absolutely got it done when they found themselves in a position where they were getting it done. They went through the playoffs. But you know what also happened? Alex Anthopoulos made big moves to kind of make that push. So maybe Kyle Dubas kind of has to channel Alex Anthopoulos if he wants something to happen. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, look, there's been a lot of talk about that with Masai. Like that's what he did with the Raptors. It's been one thing that Kyle Dubas has been reluctant to do. He believes in his players. Look, we're going on way too long on the Leafs, but the Leafs have in my view, the Leafs have given these players like everything. Honestly, like off ice, this organization does probably as much or more than any other one in the league. And just in terms of the way that they can rehab injuries, the medical facilities, the sports science, the nutrition, the Leafs they've kind of given these guys all the tools you would want to maximize what you can be. They've constantly gone out and signed players, and they've made trades when there were certain needs. And at some point, these players that Kyle Dubas has believed in will get it done or they won't. I think that's kind of where I'm at. And obviously, you don't win with just two players in the NHL. You don't even win with 4 stars or 4-star caliber players. There's a lot of other players on the roster. Last night, the Leafs were playing with their 3rd-string goaltender, Erik Källgren. Maybe that's too much to ask of him in that moment. You know, like there's a lot of different factors here, but I think ultimately they have to find a way to get it done with these guys, or else, basically, or else someone else is making that decision.
Or else. That being said, the Leafs are not the only team going through issues. The Columbus Blue Jackets had a closed door meeting after a really, really bad loss to New Jersey, 7-1 game. I know Steve was making a big deal about how the flight from Anaheim to Toronto is about 5 hours. I believe the Blue Jackets are flying to Finland for some of the little global international games in the NHL season. That must be quite a long flight for Columbus. What's your read on what's going on there?
They're in a tough spot, and you know what I saw there is a lot of accountability. Brad Larson, their head coach, came out and sort of said, "This is on me. I've got to better prepare the players." I saw Zach Werenski saying, "This is on the players." I mean, at least if you're looking for some small positives, doesn't seem like there's a lot of finger pointing or but there's a recognition. I mean, you lose 7-1 in any game, that's tough. But this comes in a week where they were beaten 4-0 by Boston. They had gave up 5 unanswered goals to Pittsburgh. Not too long in the distant past, or 3-7 out of the gate. And yeah, long closed door meeting after Sunday's game in New Jersey, delayed the flight probably a little bit to Finland. And so it's not the ideal time. I mean, in a perfect world, and let's face it, we don't live in one. You want to be going to one of if you're going into an outdoor game where like your families are around and it's fun, or if you're going to the Global Series as they are this week to play 2 games in Tampere against the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, you want it to be a sort of a team bonding, fun journey, and they're kind of arriving with some questions, and they have some Finnish people that'll have to be front and center. I would expect that includes general manager Jarmo Kekalainen, who's Finnish, of course, Patrick Laine on their top line. And so those guys will be under even a little bit more scrutiny or be more front and center than would typically be the case. And you do so after all this. And so, it's amazing, this league, like we are only a couple weeks in, but multiple teams have had closed door meetings. We've gone through what's gone through in Vancouver. The Leafs are there. Columbus is there. There's other teams, maybe they don't get as much spotlight, but there's a lot of teams that were expected to be really good that are kind of cruising around 500 or a little below. And the urgency already just feels like it picks up with each passing week. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, let's face it, to have these jobs. It's very front facing, and there's not a lot of patience, I guess, when you're a professional athlete.
Absolutely. I mean, to your point, you bring up the Leafs, you bring up the Canucks. Like, it feels as if like we've let the Blue Jackets kind of slide a little bit under the radar. I mean, they have the meeting over the weekend. I think Elvis Merzlikins' wife had to go on Instagram and talk down all these people who were berating her husband. The power play is terrible. They have not scored a power play goal, I think, in about 25 something opportunities to this point in the year. This is a team that got Johnny Gaudreau, the big prize in the free agency market. Like, this is not a good start to the first few games for the Blue Jackets. It's terrible. No,
but it's a matter of expectations, right? Like, to me, that organization still needs help down the middle. In the game on Sunday, I was reading Aaron Portzline's column in The Athletic. Like, he was talking about how the top line had 2 shots, right? That's a line with Gaudreau and Laine, but also their center is Jack Roslovic. And no offense to him, it's not what you would think is a top line center caliber player. And so I think the Blue Jackets should be viewed as a work in progress. They did sign Gaudreau to a long-term deal. We'll see where things end up with Laine. He's not under contract quite as long, but I still think that they're turning things over. It doesn't mean there isn't a whole bunch of impatience in their fan base. And of course the players that are there today want to win, but it's a little different circumstance than even Vancouver. And then I would say then Toronto's at an even higher end, right? I mean, we're being critical of a team that still does have 10 points in 10 games. It's just that they're supposed to have 15 points in 10 games. And they talk about trying to challenge for the President's Trophy and all that stuff. I mean, it's a matter of degrees when it comes to what each team should expect. And so I think it's not just that it's Toronto and that it's Canada and it's a big market and all that. I think it's because it's supposed to be a top level team that hasn't played that way yet.
What about Brad Larson's future?
Man, why are we trying to fire all the coaches?
I'm not trying to fire nobody. I'm just trying to ask the questions.
I mean, he's second season on the job. So I'm sure there's some degree of pressure around him, but management will probably be gauging him more on what they're seeing behind the scenes, or at least as much on what they're seeing behind the scenes as the record at this point. Obviously they'd like a better record, but I think that they understand that they're still got a couple years before they're supposed to be top level, top tier. And so how he manages the situation will be part of, I would think, how they view him, but I'd be surprised if he was in danger of a firing just because of the record. I do think that there's a little bit more nuance to that situation. Whereas, as I say with Toronto, it's just like, all right, it's time to win or not. Essentially, like it's find a way, or someone else will be finding the way. And so I think that he's probably got a little bit of rope there, but there's 13 coaching changes last year, so we're about due for one statistically.
No more coaches for the rest of the NHL news and notes portion of this show. How about just defensemen? It seems like we're going to be going a little defenseman heavy for the rest of it. One guy I want to bring up is a guy who used to be good a long time ago, and it seems like he is back. Erik Karlsson. We talked about that Leafs road trip. He scored the OT winner in that Sharks-Leafs game. He also had a really cool play where he was defending Mitch Marner. He didn't have a stick and still used his body position. This is a guy who used to get dumped on for his defense all the time, and he actually tried to make a good defensive play without his own stick. But of course, the OT goal is what we're going to remember the most, but also 6 goals, 11 points in 11 games. What do you think of the Erik Karlsson resurgence?
Well, I love it. I have to say, prime Erik Karlsson was one of the more fun players in the league for me to watch. And obviously he's had so many injuries and he's getting a little older, early 30s now. So I don't think you expect him to ever get back to what he was, but the fact that he's back to being an impactful defenseman is significant on a couple levels. I mean, he carries a huge cap hit for San Jose. And so he's expected to deliver results. And, it's not just the 6 goals in 11 games, because I think we would expect, his things will normalize there shooting percentage wise. He's not going to score every second game, I would not think, throughout the season, but he's playing almost 24 minutes a night for the Sharks, and the results look really good. And you start to wonder at some point, like, is there a way the Sharks could construct a Karlsson trade? We've already seen Mike Grierson taking over that post trade. Brent Burns, a very popular longtime member of the organization, had to work with Brent because he had a limited no trade clause, and Carolina actually wasn't one of the teams on it. But he was willing to waive to go there at the draft. And, a lot of the Sharks' other top players like Erik Karlsson have full no moves. But I just wonder at some point in time if this is more than just a blip in the road, and if Erik Karlsson is back to being at a level that might entice a contender, if there's a way that you can combine either salary coming back to the Sharks or money being retained in a deal. Because, I think big picture, San Jose under new management would like to make some deals, would like to shake things up even more there. That I would expect they'll hang on to Thomas Hertl and some of the young prospects in the organization, but there's still a lot of veteran players that could and will be shipped out of San Jose over time, as Mike Grier sort of gets more time in the seat he's in. And so, it's a little soon to start up Erik Karlsson rumors. And I will fully grant it's so difficult in a league. Like we're going to talk all year, right, about Patrick Kane and what teams can take on his salary, even at 50%. Erik Karlsson, it's not just that he has a higher cap hit than Patrick Kane. He's got 4 more years, I think, beyond this one on that deal.
And an NMC.
Yeah. And at least 3. So it's not going to be an easy trade. It might not be one till the offseason, but it's something to watch, I guess, if he's really back, because this is a special player, even at this, point in time, now that he's healthy, and, his first month of the season has been great.
Absolutely. It got me thinking about all the cool plays that he's done in his career, like the long stretch pass to Mike Hoffman when they were playing against the Boston Bruins. That's a really sick play. But yeah, good to see Erik Karlsson back to the Erik Karlsson of old. And I did say there would be more defensemen. Ethan Bear over the last few days, a guy who we've seen in Edmonton for a little while, went to Carolina, and now he finds himself in Vancouver. What do you think about that move?
I like it for the Canucks. I think it's consistent with what they said they want to do, which is bringing in some younger players with upside that theoretically will give them a chance to fit in with the sort of the same age as the core players that they're building around. And, Ethan Bear, he's one of those defensemen. Like, I think a lot of focus on what he can't do versus on what he does actually do well. Remember, start of last year, he played on the top pairing in Carolina. And, it ended up being a shorter amount of time than he wanted. He got COVID in November and had a really difficult time recovering from that. Had a long recovery. It wasn't just a couple days on the sidelines in terms of getting his breath back and being able to push himself in workouts and all that. And then, he was a scratch by the end of last season and he was a scratch to start this season. So he hasn't played a lot lately, but I just think if you're where Vancouver is, I mean, he's a right shot defenseman. The Hurricanes ultimately were willing to retain some of his salary, which made it work for Vancouver cap wise. And, I would suspect the Canucks will ease him in to some degree, but I think it's at least a reasonable bet at this point in time that he can become something. Reminds me a little bit of their Travis Dermott trade last year. I mean, they're just trying to stockpile guys that they're not rookies anymore. They're not just finding the way. They're pros that there's still some question. Will they take the next step? Will they become regulars? Will they have 10-year careers or are they going to have 5-year careers? And so, we don't have that answer today, but, I think the trade makes a lot of sense, with where the Canucks are at with the injuries they have on their blue line. And, Ethan Bear was in some degree of interest. Like I know Buffalo checked in on him. They have some defensive injuries and they're looking to upgrade. The Maple Leafs checked in on him. Didn't work for them. I mean, the Leafs are actually at 50 contracts right now. So any deal they make to bring someone in would have to include someone else going out, either in the same trade or in a different one. But, Ethan Bear, it's his third organization. It's obviously a big opportunity for him. I think he will get a chance to play. But, I think it's a good upside play, just like the Jack Studnicka deal they made with Boston. You're talking about a 23-year-old player that plays center and wing. Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, they're just trying to stockpile and see if some of these guys hit. And I think that they're in a position where they can do that. And so I like those two trades. And then they got 2 wins last week. So that puts some of the pressure off, at least in the short term.
Winning is always good. It cures a lot of evils. We've gone through a lot of hockey. We've gone through some tough times for some teams. But in the final third of the show, Ask CJ, there should be some pretty fun questions.
I think I need a little chocolate hit for this segment.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going crispy crunch.
Okay. So enjoy your crispy crunch. While we will have asked CJ got a whole bunch of questions off of Twitter and Discord. But before we get to those questions, we have kind of mentioned at different points about the fact that CJ is not necessarily always up to date when it comes to pop culture, and that definitely applies to movies. A few of you on Discord have given some movie recommendations for CJ, and I just want to read off some of the different submissions that we've seen before we get to Ask CJ. Is that cool while you enjoy your crispy crunch?
Absolutely.
Let's go through some of these. So Florida man Matt Maroon recommends the movie. You might have seen this, I'm not sure. Snatch with Jason Statham and Brad Pitt. I think it's a heist movie from what I remember, but
it is a heist movie, and I actually did see that one back in the day.
Okay. All right. So that means you don't have to watch the movie Snatch.
I will say, if I was a fan of anything, I really have enjoyed some Brad Pitt movies over the years.
Interesting. Okay.
I liked Fight Club back in the day when it came out.
You're a big Fight Club guy.
Yeah. And then Snatch was the same time period within a couple years. Like it was. So I haven't seen, I actually don't even know what Brad Pitt's new movies are, but I thought I quite enjoyed him over. If I had to put like a favorite actor, he'd be in a short list of the few I know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what other new movies Brad Pitt's really doing. I haven't really followed him in a minute. From Dr. Sun, 3 music-heavy movies for CJ from 3 different categories. The Blues Brothers, a classic comedy with an unbeatable artist lineup that makes you jump and dance. Makes you jump up and dance. Amadeus, a beautiful classical music movie mixed with a well-written story about the tragic life of a musical genius. And The Pianist, an overwhelming World War II drama with a deep historical perspective and heavy emotions.
All right. So do you want me to take one of these and review it? Is this the idea, or?
I mean, I think if you take one You could take any of the ones that we've mentioned, the one that interests you the most, and then you could be like, hey, I spent an off night watching this movie, and just tell us what you think of it. If
Yeah,
you
I
do
know.
that,
I know. Adam Wilde wanted like a little CJ's movie corner. So
we could do it once a month, like CJ's movie corner. You let us know what movie you're going to watch, and then you give us your thoughts on it. I like that idea.
I don't know if like some of those movies have enough SEO.
We don't have to include that in the title. Presumably, we'll be talking about, I don't know, some other interesting hockey topic.
I'm like, does anyone really want to watch me give a review of Amadeus?
What about the movie Whiplash?
Whiplash
with Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, a student drummer struggling to impress a tyrannical teacher to be as good as he can be. This is from Mavid the Boy, and I think he has more musical movie suggestions. He has that one. He has Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which I've seen. That's a really good movie with Michael Cera, a pseudo superhero coming of age film. Scott Pilgrim has to fight the 7 deadly exes of Ramona Flowers to win her love, based on the graphic novels. Thank you to everyone who wrote descriptions for each of these movies, by the way.
I don't even know if they're real. Remember, we played that game for a while. So
that's true.
These could all be made up.
No, they're all real.
It'll be like A Quiet Place, the movie set in the library.
This next one for sure is real. Walk the Line, where Joaquin Phoenix plays Johnny Cash.
Okay, I haven't seen that, but I'd be interested.
That was a really it's like Oscar worthy in the 2000s. Joaquin Phoenix might have actually won, or at least been considered for an Academy Award for that movie. But those were some of the suggestions that were brought about on Discord. So thank you to Dr. Sun, Mavid the Boy as well, for mentioning some of the other ones, some of the recommendations, I should say, excuse me. And I've just trying to remember the other person who mentioned Florida Man, Matt Maroon. I'm trying to make sure we get all the names in so everyone's acknowledged.
What's the most recent great sports movie? Because I love a good sports movie, but I feel like unless I'm missing one, like the last couple of years hasn't really included one.
Draft Day? Kevin Costner plays the GM of the Cleveland Browns, and it's basically him going through an NFL draft.
Oh, okay. Kevin Costner, he's always in the sports movies.
What other sports movie has he been in?
Field of Dreams.
Right. Yes. Duh.
There's a few others though too.
Yeah, I don't know why my brain's not giving me all the names.
But if any listeners have any good recent sports movies, like ones I would have missed in this period of my life where I didn't watch movies, I'm down.
Okay, everyone send in a really good sports movie. I don't know why my brain's not giving me a more recent one, but I know Draft Day in the last few years definitely comes up.
Because you're wearing a Homer Simpson onesie at 7:30 in the morning.
Dope. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Off Twitter from Ladies Talking Leafs. We visited your hometown for apple picking last weekend and saw a sign that said to visit a jail attraction. Is it worth a visit? Smiley face.
So I've never been to the jail in Cobourg, which again,
that's good.
But the jail is a restaurant, or it used to be a restaurant. I'm not even sure if it's still a restaurant. I think it might just be a hotel. I mean, basically the quick story there is that it was literally the former town jail that at one point was turned into a bar and restaurant / small hotel, and I never went to it. So I don't know if it's worth the visit. It's in a nice part of town, right near the beach, waterfront area, but I haven't been. So I'll have to report back. I'll get Cobra Papa's review, and then I'll share that with Ladies Talking Leafs.
So this means you're sending your father to jail?
No, he's probably been there, though.
I'm kidding.
He's lived in Cobourg for 50 years. So there's very few experiences or things in town that he doesn't at least have an opinion on.
Very fair. I can't wait to hear his report, by the way. For Galaxy Ranger, which I think is a really fun question, a really interesting question. I really want to know what your answer to this is going to be. Are you wearing a fake beard?
No, sir. This is 100% homemade.
Yes, with the salt and pepper and all.
Little salt and pepper, no fake beard.
Next one from Jaideep. You mentioned Spurs on your podcast a few weeks ago. Curious, with Canada in the World Cup, if you've taken a greater interest in European football, and if you have picked a team to follow. There are loads of young Canadians in the Champions League this year.
I'm definitely more interested in football, soccer in general. I'm excited to watch Canada and Qatar this month or into November. But I haven't really picked a team, though, if I'm being honest. I kind of follow Spurs a bit. I've just got a few buddies that are into Spurs. So like I just check on the scores usually just to like send them a chiding text or whatever. But I'm not waking up and watch that on Saturday morning just yet. I want to get into it. I really do. It's just life's busy. The hockey season's busy. And I need to go over and go to a game. I feel like if I go to a game, I might get a little bit more invested. Like you can't fake it as a fan, right? I mean, Julian, you're a fan of things like I watched my Cowboys yesterday. Like I'm legitimately just into the Dallas Cowboys but I need to get, I want to get into the Premier League a little bit more, but I'm not there yet. I saw producer Nick was ranting on Twitter about his team though.
Oh, about Liverpool. I don't know why Liverpool fans seem to be going through it this year. They're underwhelming. Like they've been underwhelming to start off the year. My suggestion in order to get into the Premier League, find some of your more hardcore soccer buddies, find a soccer bar and watch a game from there. And I think that might help.
Now you're speaking my language.
Exactly. Next one from Dylan Murphy. What will it take for the league to change their tune on regional broadcast blackouts?
Okay. I get a lot of these questions in the weekly Ask CJs like along this vein. And I know Dylan. Hey, Dylan, thanks for the question, bud. I don't fully understand the blackout issue. Honestly, I haven't asked anyone. Like I should figure, like, I suppose just because I have the NHL package so I can watch all the games. Like, I don't know what the issues are for each person based in region. But I will say this, it's obviously an antiquated system. I mean, we live in a world where information is free flowing. There should be no problem in being able to watch any game anytime, especially if you're willing to pay for whatever service is being offered. And so I don't get it. I mean, I on some level, I understand, look, if you're a team, let's just take the Leafs, they have regional broadcast deals. So some games are shown regionally on Sportsnet, regionally on TSN, and then a certain portion of their games are shown nationally on Sportsnet's platforms. And so that's two different packages essentially that are sold by the teams. And so part of it is, I would think, just the business, but surely in the next few years, there's going to be some kind of change. I can't even imagine that there isn't a solution to this, that you should be able to watch every game, as I say, especially if you're willing to pay for whatever service is providing them.
I am in Alberta. I couldn't even watch the Leafs game yesterday.
Right, because that was a regional TSN game, and you're not in the Leafs region.
Correct.
But I mean, yeah, like it's left over from days gone by, right? I think there was a point where, quite literally, if you were like the owner of the Buffalo Sabres, when information was harder to come by and you couldn't get highlights of everything, you maybe wouldn't want everyone in your fan base getting distracted watching a Leafs game and not coming to your game. But I just think that we're so far beyond that being a relevant piece of existence that there's got to be a better solution. But also, I don't have the right business mind for this one, so that there must be. I mean, follow the money, man. If you're looking for the answer to most questions, especially when it comes to stuff like this.
Last one from Shoe Shine. What's your must-watch movie on or around Halloween time?
I was never
kind of funny because the whole thing with movies.
I was never into horror movies, really. I don't have one. I'd love to even give you a funny answer. Like I can't think of a Halloween movie. But you should watch Fight Club if you haven't seen Fight Club.
Great.
That's
a great Fight Club.
That's a great movie any time of year.
I'll pull up another one then from Ty, and I think this one's directed towards me. What is your favorite moment of the season so far with being in a new city and a team? Julian. Favorite moment of the season? I think actually it's just going to that first Battle of Alberta in Edmonton. And I mean, the Awesome Country goal on Brett Kulak was really cool. But yeah, I think just getting to do the drive up to go watch the game in Edmonton, a beautiful arena, and watching the Battle of Alberta for the first time. That's probably my favorite moment of this new journey I'm on right now. It's been really fun.
Do you have any road games coming up?
I believe I'm going to be in Florida next month. And then in December, I'm going to be in Columbus and then Toronto and then Montreal. Those are the next few ones I know for sure I'm doing between now and the end of the calendar year.
Oh, man. I haven't looked at the schedule. Does a Toronto visit allow us to do a podcast in person or?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the flight for the Toronto portion of that road trip. Because at this rate, I don't even know if I'll be able to even like pop in and say like hi with the way that things are going. But no, I'm sure you'll be at the game.
I mean, I'll be at the game. We'll see you at the press box.
Exactly.
We can take a selfie. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's guaranteed to happen. Yeah, I'm gonna figure that out. But I will be in Toronto at some point in December, and I'm looking forward to also being back home in Montreal for a couple of days too. But yeah, not that many games, but at least from now until the end of 2022. Hopefully more in 2023. But things have been fun. Things have been good. I'm really happy I moved to Calgary, to be honest.
That's great, man. Are you gonna go trick or treating tonight?
Should I?
I don't know. But do you think you live in a place where you might get trick or treaters? That's maybe the more relevant question.
I don't live in a building that I think facilitates that.
Okay.
But I do see the kind of places around me, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if I saw kids walking around and going from house to house. It's just my building's like a kind of like apartment condo building, so like I don't know how that would work with giving out candy, but there are some actual like houses like in the neighborhood.
I just assume you're such a proponent of O. Henry, you're just going door to door anyway and just giving out O. Henry bars, like just spreading the word.
I feel like, I don't have a problem doing that as a disciple of the O. Henry chocolate bar. So joke's on you, buddy.
I'll save any O. Henrys that I have left over here and give them to you when you're in Toronto.
Yeah, I would love that very much. Put them in the fridge, keep them nice and cold, and then just leave them out a day before I show up and I'll eat them all. Perfect. Thank you, CJ.
Perfect.
All right. We've done the Halloween edition, episode 105 of the Chris Johnston Show. CJ, can you do a good Batman voice for us before we go?
Thank you for listening to the show.
I love that. That was amazing. Thank you for listening to the show. We'll be back on Thursday with Stick Taps. For CJ, I'm Julian.
So long and peace. Justice for Gotham.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.